Hi everyone, I'm Ginger Balch from In Sheep's Clothing Yarn Shop, welcoming you to another episode of Focus on Fiber. Have you ever seen those beautiful scarves that have beads knitted into them? Well, today we're going to start with the sweetest beaded scarf ever. This one right here, as you can see, it has a beautiful beaded scallop on it, really pretty beaded scalloped edge. And this, you can't see it on because I only have one side of the scarf done, but it has two sides. And because of the nature of the way that this is knit, you literally knit one side of the scarf up, and then you stop halfway at the back neck, and then you start the other side of the scarf, and you work the other way up. And then what you do is you either sew or you graft the back neck together. Because if you try to go from one way to the other way, you won't be able to get the scallop on the other side. So that's why that's done that way. This scarf right here is using a DK weight silk merino and silk yarn. The silk gives it a little bit of extra strength in it because for this particular scarf, what we're doing with the beads is we have to pre-string the beads onto the yarn. So we have all these beads here on the yarn first, and then what happens is as we're knitting we slide the beads into place. Now there's another way that you can knit beads into a piece too, and that requires that you put in each bead as you go, but I kind of like this method because this is a really very simple way to do it. Believe it or not, this is actually a beginner's project because it's all just knit stitch. And then you just slide the beads into place. There's no increasing or decreasing on this. The beads kind of do all that scallop all by themselves. Now the beads that I used for this, there's actually two different sizes that I'm showing here. Because this is a DK weight, I was using the size 6 beads. And if we were going to use a little bit thinner yarn, we would use, say, maybe a size 8. You can get these beads in tubes, you can get them in packages, and depending on how many beads you want to put on your scarf would determine how many packages that you're going to need of your beads. And it's really important that you have a good idea of how many beads that you need and put them all in your yarn first, because once you start knitting you can't add the beads on unless you cut your yarn and then re-bead the new yarn and then have a join. So, I mean, there is one way of getting around it, but, you know, as knitters, we try to make as few joins as possible, especially in a scarf like this. Now, when we're going to bead our yarn, what we want to do is get something that's going to be able to put the beads on. And I have this very, very simple little tool. You can have a beading needle, but this particular tool is actually a dental tool. It's a floss threader. So I get these when I go to my dentist, but you can also go to the pharmacy and you can pick up a package of these. And one of these will get you through a whole project. So what you want to do, so once you have your beads and your yarn that you've chosen, again, you want to make sure that it's a good, you know, strong yarn. Even though this is very soft, again, because of the silk, it's very strong. Now I've already put some beads on here because I didn't want it, it takes time to put the beads on. So what we would do is we take our yarn and then we take this little tool, and then what you would do is you thread your yarn through the floss beater, and then what you would just do is with the other tip you're just going to pick up your beads. Now you can count them as you go. And I discovered that as I was putting these particular beads on, now what I'm going to just do is I'm going to take these beads and just thread them down. See how it goes through down my yarn. And one little trick is to leave one bead up on your yarn. I'm going to thread the rest of these down. This way you don't keep losing that tail and have to keep rethreading, so you have something to keep it in place. So you just keep going back and just threading your beads. Now going back to when I was putting the beads on here, when you get beads, I mean, these happen to be just some beads I happen to have hanging around. I don't even know where I got these from, but I did notice they're not the best quality beads. beads like what are already in these containers here, like these. These are a nice quality bead, and you know, again, it's one of those things, you get what you pay for, because these are all different sizes. They look like they're about right, but when I'm threading them on here, they're all different sizes. And I think for this project it won't matter that much because they're all different colors. But you know, when you have different size beads, it could maybe alter the look of your finished piece. Another thing too is you want to make sure that because they're glass, that they're not rough inside, because as you can see as I'm sliding these beads down, they could shred your yarn up if there's a little, because it's glass and if it's rough inside, and you don't want that to happen. So I'm just sliding these down. And you want to make sure that the beads are big enough, because otherwise you're really going to be shredding your yarn. All right, so let's just say these are enough beads for what we're going to do today. We're not going to put on the entire scallop. We'll just put on part of the scallop. Just put this out of here. Okay, so what you do is we slide all our beads out of the way so we have plenty to work with. And for this particular pattern, what I'm going to do is we have a little edge here, and then we have our scallop, and then there's another little bit of knitting in here. We have five, let's see, we start out with 5 stitches, and then we have 4 stitches in between. So what I'm going to do is put my slip knot on. I'm not going to do a I'm not going to do a long tail cast on for this, because an E-wrap is actually the best way to go on here. It's not usually the cast on I use, but for this particular project, because of the way the beads are already on our yarn, we really can't do the long tail cast on. So I'm going to do an E-wrap or thumb loop. I'm going to put on 5 stitches. And you don't want to do them too tightly, because this particular cast on can be tricky to knit into. So there's my 5 stitches. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 beads. 6 beads, sorry. That's 6 beads. And I'm going to slide those up nice and tight to my cast on. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cast on an additional 4 stitches. And again, I want to get those fairly as nice and snug to the bead there, but being careful that it doesn't go over the bead. 2, 3, and 4. And I'm going to do one more scallop by sliding 6 more stitches, 6 more beads, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I'm going to slide those up right to the cast on. And then I'm going to put on 5 more stitches for my edge, because we start with 5 and we're going to end with 5. That's 3, 4, and 5. Okay, so we're going to have a little 2 scallop scarf here. Okay, so now what I want to do is I just want to slide some of these beads out of the way. What you'll find that's going to happen is you'll be sliding the beads out of the way, and then you have to slide some of them back to use them. Slide them out of the way. You're going to constantly be doing that, and that's why your yarn needs to be good and strong to put up with that. So now for the next row, what I'm going to do is I'm going to knit my 5 stitches. There we go. And because this is a kind of a loose cast on, it's a little tricky, so we have to do it nice and careful. It'd help if I could see them too. Okay. Once you get past that first row, the cast on, then it's much easier. Okay, 4 and 5. Now that next stitch that's next to the bead, you just want to be careful when you knit that you don't accidentally push the bead out of the way. So there's my bead. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide six more beads, 4, 6, into place, and I'm going to knit my next 4 stitches. What happens is you're working 2 sides, so you have to have 6 and 6 beads. I knew I should have put my glasses on before I started this. I can't see what I'm doing. There we go. Okay, and then we're going to slide 6 more beads. So there we go. So it's 3, 6 more beads into place, and then knit our last 5 stitches. And just be careful that you don't slide that extra bead into your knitting. When you've done it, you realize that you've done it. This cast on makes me really appreciate the long tail cast on. Because it gives you a firmer cast on. This is just kind of a loosey-goosey single stitch cast on. There we go. Whew, glad that's done. Okay, so now if you look at it, you can see that you have one side and the other side. And what happens is as you knit, you can literally put your finger up in between the scallop as you go. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it around. And this is where it really gets to be interesting, is we're going to knit across the first 5 stitches again, and we're always knitting, which is what makes this so nice and easy. There we go. Much easier once you've got that first row knit. There we go. Okay, now we slid 6 beads last time. Now we're going to do 5. Because we want that scallop effect, so it's going to go from 6 to 5 to 4 to 3 to 2 to 1. So there's 3, 4, and 5. And the thing with this, okay, we get that up nice and snug. And now we're going to knit the next 4 stitches in between. To me, this part is so much fun, so that by the time you're done doing the scallop, which doesn't take very long to do, you're done with it. And it's kind of like, well, the fun's gone, but that's why you carry the rest of the beads all through it. Otherwise, to me, it'd be kind of boring then. Did all the fun beading and then it's just knitting. Okay, so there was another 5. And now I'm going to knit my last 5 stitches. There we go. Okay, now you can see, okay, I got that row done, but now you can see how my beads are starting to creep up on me. So now you have to slide these down out of the way. But still remembering that you're still going to need some of them on the next row. So now I turn it around. I'm going to knit, and I still need to get some more beads out of the way. I'm going to knit my next 5 stitches. And there we go. Okay, now we have one more row of 5s to do. So we did 2 rows of 6s, we do 2 rows of 5s. Because you have your back and your front of your scallop. So now I do my 4 stitches in between. Slide my next 5. 3, 4, 5. There we go. See how those beads just slide right up? But you can also see now our scallop is starting to take effect. We have a longer loop here, and it's going to get a little shorter as we keep going up. And then we have the same thing on the other side. So, slide some of this out of the way. Now this time, so we've done our 2 5s. So, you guessed it, we're going to do 2 4s. Do our first 5 stitches. Okay, so now we slide our 5 or 4. Our next 4 stitches, slide 4. You can see how quickly this really moves along. And then knit our last 5. Okay, there we go. And you can't really tell until you're pretty much done about how nicely, see how you have that nice little 6, 5, and then 4? It just makes it lie really nicely. So now I'm going to do the last row of 4s. I saw a really, really pretty necklace that was knit in pretty much the same style, that it was scalloped, and the beads will work the same way. And it just was so pretty on the neck because it just, the way the scallop was, and it just was really, really nice. Okay, so now we do another set of 4s. And there we go. But you're getting the idea. This really is pretty. This blue with all these multis. Now this would have really been pretty too with like a crystal bead or something that's totally complementary to it or contrasting. But that really does look nice. Another thing that you can do too is like, I like these tube beads because they come in all different shades of the same color. And that's what I used for the green one. If you look at them, some of them are solids, some of them are crystal, and they're just really pretty. So now, let's see, we did 2, 4, sometimes I lose track. Okay, so we did our 2 4s, and actually a good way to keep track is, there's my tail. So I know I've done my 2 even rows then. So now I'm going down to 3. And we'll see if I end up running out of beads before. I kind of just guessed. I didn't do the math to figure out exactly how many beads I need, because you could figure it out. And slide another 3. But when I tell beginners that this is something you can, they admire it, and I say, oh, it's something that you can make, they don't believe me. But you can see for yourself just how easy this really is. I mean, we're just knitting and sliding beads, that's it. It's mostly the preparation of putting the beads onto your yarn that takes, the most time. Haven't exactly timed myself, but I figure doing one of these scarves pretty much takes, let's see, I think it was 2 or 3. I think to get the size that I like, it takes 3 tubes of these, and there's about, let's see, there's about 100. So that's probably about It's several hundred beads that you have to put on, that you're putting on. So that takes a little bit of time. Okay, so our last set of 3s. But I think you certainly have gotten the idea by now of how this is working. And I'll lay it down for you so that you can really see what it looks like. But see how it's getting, we're getting that scallop. And the thing that I said that, because you have both sides, even though this is knit, because we're sliding those beads, see how you have one side and one side, like that. Now this does give you a lot of weight, which is nice as far as the scarf is concerned. And I have seen, once you've done your scallop, and let's see, we're done 3 and 3, so now we're doing 2 and 2. We're almost finished here. Once you've done your scallop, then you can see here that what we simply did was we carried up one bead straight up on top of each scallop. So for instance, when I'm done with this one, we'll have 2 rows of beads going straight up above our scallop. Okay, so that's 2 beads. And 2. Okay, turn that around. And I'm not going to probably have quite enough beads. So that's why you always throw in a few extra beads, even if you did count and you figured that you had it right. Just always do a couple extra. I think what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to put, so we have 2, 2. No, I just need to do 2. I'm going to do 2 more sets of beads, and then I have just enough. I'm using my last 2 beads, which happens to totally, well, almost finish my scallop, because the next row, what I should be doing is 1 and 1. But you can see we almost have the entire scallop done. Look how beautiful that is. These would almost look like they make even pretty earrings just hanging like that. So anyway, after we've done this, and then we do our 1 and 1 across, then what we do is for the rest of the scarf, pretend that this is the rest of the scarf, we're just going to have 1 bead. We'll knit across and slide 1 bead. Knit across, slide 1 bead, and we'll continue that all the way up. Now what some people do, I've seen some scarves where they'll put a bead in every row all the way up the scarf. And that's fine, but you should really make sure that your knitting is nice and snug, because that's a lot of beads and that really does kind of weigh the scarf down. So what I like to do is I like to go every 4 rows. So I'll do a bead, on one side, and then another 1 and 1 bead on the other side, and then I'll knit 4 rows without beads. And then I'll do 2 more rows with beads, and then 4 more rows without beads. And I think that that just kind of takes a lot of the weight off. And also, that's a lot of beads when you start adding up how many beads is on your scarf there. But something very, very beautiful. It certainly would make a lovely gift for somebody, even for yourself. So you might want to think about this. Pick somebody's favorite color, some beautiful beads, and what a gorgeous gift that would be. So I'm really glad that you spent the time today with me, and I hope that you're going to get yourself some beads and start one of your very own scarves. And until the next time, don't forget, it's important to have a focus on fiber. See you soon.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.